The Revenant is based on a true story about a man named Hugh Glass, played by Leonardo DiCaprio in the film. But the actual story of Hugh Glass is even crazier and more intense than what's shown in The Revenant. Hugh Glass was born near Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1783 to Scotch-Irish immigrant parents. During his early years, Hugh was a seafarer until his ship was boarded by the notorious French pirate Jean Lafitte. Hugh was given the choice to either die or become a pirate. Glass chose piracy over death and spent the following years being forced into deadly pirating raids, doing everything that pirates do. After about 2 years of this, Hugh managed to escape his pirate captors by jumping off a ship and swimming ashore in Texas. However, when Hugh reached the shore, he wasn't exactly safe. The Karankawa Indians, who patrolled that area, weren't fond of pirates. It was rumored that the Karankawa were cannibals who delighted in capturing, killing, and eating European pirates. Glass had to navigate their territory without a map, which he did, eventually reaching Kansas. Glass was traveling with another man who had also escaped the pirate crew. Though they thought they were safe once they reached Kansas, they weren't. They were captured by a group of Pawnee Indians. The Pawnee hung Glass's traveling companion upside down, jammed pine needles into his body, and set him on fire. Glass was forced to watch, knowing he was next. Just as the Pawnee were about to torture him the same way, Hugh offered them a large packet of vermilion, a bright red dye that could be used for war paint and other purposes. The Pawnee liked it and decided to let Glass live, even inviting him to stay with them. He did, living with the Pawnee for about 2 years, and even marrying before continuing his journey to St. Louis. That's where Hugh Glass first got involved in the fur trade and became a mountain man. His job involved living in the mountains, surviving off the land, trapping beavers, and trading their pelts with fur companies and Indian tribes. Hugh responded to an ad in the Missouri Gazette by General William Henry Ashley of the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, which called for a corps of 100 men to ascend the Missouri River as part of a fur trading expedition. During the journey, the group of 100 stopped to trade with a band of Ree Indians, but the Ree did not want to trade and killed many of the mountain men. The remaining men retaliated by setting the Ree's village on fire, killing many men, women, and children. This sparked an all-out war, and Hugh found himself right in the middle of it. When everything settled, he survived, and he and 13 other mountain men set out for Yellowstone to trap beavers. One fateful day, Hugh wandered into an area that had been cleared, only to discover it was a bear's nest. What happened to Hugh in that bear's nest was almost exactly like what happened in The Revenant. He was mauled nearly to death. The bear tore chunks of his flesh and threw them to her cubs to eat, and the cubs joined in, clawing and tearing at him, while their mother held him down. By the time the rest of his men arrived and killed the bear, Hugh was a mangled wreck, unable to see, speak, or move. The men did their best to bandage him, but they assumed he would die by morning, at best. However, Hugh survived the night. Needing to move forward, General Henry decided to have the men carry Hugh on a makeshift stretcher. But after some time, it became clear that carrying a man who was 98% dead through rough terrain made no sense. Still thinking he was on death's door, the general chose to leave Hugh behind, leaving 2 men to stay with him until he passed. These 2 men were Fitzgerald, an older man about Hugh's age, and Bridger, a young teenager. After 5 days, Hugh was still alive. The mountain men were being pursued by the Ree Indians, who sought revenge for their burned village. Sensing the Ree were closing in, Fitzgerald decided to take all of Hugh's provisions, including his rifle and shot, and leave him to die, thinking he was already too far gone. Fitzgerald and Bridger dragged Hugh's broken body to the edge of a creek and left him there. However, Hugh did not die. After several days, he woke up, drank from the creek, and ate berries from a nearby tree. Only one of his arms and one of his legs were functional, but the rest of his body was broken, bruised, and torn from the bear attack. After a few days, he became furious that he had been left to die, and decided to crawl hundreds of miles through the mountains to find the men who abandoned him. Having lived with the Pawnee, Hugh had learned how to survive in the wilderness. As he traveled, he continued to wash and care for his wounds. At one point, he encountered a pack of wolves attacking a buffalo. He scared the wolves off and ate some of the buffalo meat himself. Feeling a bit stronger, Hugh eventually came upon an abandoned Indian village. Though deserted, there were dogs there, and Hugh managed to strangle one and eat it. Eventually, he was able to walk, though his wounds, bones, and ligaments were still healing. However, his back, which was covered in maggots feeding on the open wounds, was not healing. He then encountered a group of Sioux Indians, who were friendly and meant him no harm. They took Hugh in, treated his wounds, and even sewed bearskin onto his back to cover the maggot-infested sores. They helped him reach Fort Kiowa, where he stayed for 2 days before meeting with French fur traders and demanding to be placed on a boat heading upriver. Hugh was still determined to find the men who had left him to die. By this point, Hugh had crawled, stumbled, and walked 250 miles. The boat upriver would take him another 300 miles in his quest for revenge. Once they reached their destination, an Indian village where they would trade beaver pelts, they found that the village had been overtaken by the Ree, who killed Hugh's entire party. He was alone in the wilderness again, being hunted by Indians. Just as the Ree were about to capture him, a heroic group of Mandan Indians intervened and rescued Hugh, bringing him to safety at Fort Tilton. At Fort Tilton, Hugh could rest, but he had no interest in resting. All he wanted was to hunt down Fitzgerald. 6 months after the bear attack and being left for dead, 6 months of crawling through mountains and freezing temperatures, eating raw buffalo and living with maggots on his back, Hugh finally found his old company at a stockade that had become Fort Henry near the Bighorn River. However, only Bridger was still there. After talking to him, Hugh realized that Bridger was essentially innocent in all of this, and Fitzgerald was the only one responsible for the hell Hugh had endured over the past 6 months. Severe winter weather kept Hugh at Fort Henry for a few months, but once he could, he boarded a boat and set off for Fort Atkinson, where Fitzgerald was said to be. During their journey, the group encountered what they thought were Pawnee Indians, but they turned out to be Ree Indians, and Hugh found himself fighting for survival once again. Amid the chaos of the fight, some of Hugh's companions escaped on a boat to Fort Atkinson, but Hugh wasn't so lucky. Left alone in the wilderness again, with the Ree Indians on his trail, Hugh walked another 400 miles through the harsh wilderness, armed with only a pocket knife. He finally made it to Fort Atkinson, where he found Fitzgerald. But there was a problem. Fitzgerald had joined the U.S. Army and was now government property. Hugh Glass couldn't kill a soldier, so he never got his revenge. The end. Seriously, that's it. After everything, that's how it ended. No dramatic confrontation, no epic fight. Hugh Glass crawled through a year's worth of suffering just to be told by an army captain that he couldn't kill Fitzgerald. And that's the true story of Hugh Glass, which is somehow even more insane and intense than how it's portrayed in The Revenant. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe for more bizarre history that you won't find in your textbooks. All those textbooks you had to return, no one has theirs anymore, right? I don't have mine either. Anyway, check out this video here and that one there, and more stuff right here. There's more good stuff if you liked it, so stick around.